Hey everyone. Now that a good chunk of people are starting to get into 5th edition, it's as good a time as ever to compare it to other systems, namely its chief contender, Pathfinder. If you don't think Pathfinder is a legit contender, you'd be wrong. Pathfinder has blown into the scene recently in the past couple of years with its tweaking of D&D 3.5, additions of classes, and in those, the various archetypes of those classes along with solid pre-made modules. An industry report came out in October, done by the Roll20 team, stated that 26.83% of all games being played were being done with the Pathfinder system. On the other hand, D&D as a total represents 43.91%. It may look like the winner is D&D, but those are all of the additions of D&D combined. Split it up and you have D&D 5e just clocking in at 12.08% of the games being played. However, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition has been gaining some traction. At the end of the year, 20.06% of all games on Roll20 were 5th edition games, and the total for D&D as a whole went up to 46.86. Meanwhile, Pathfinder has been brought down to 23.86%. What makes 5th edition gain that much traction and appeal to Pathfinders? Let's find out. First up, we have Pathfinder. You can skip this portion of the video and go to the 5th edition part if you're familiar with Pathfinder. I'm no stranger to Pathfinder, so I'll tell you what I know. It's actually a pretty fantastic system. It has very rich character customization options. However, there are definitive classes that are very powerful, and a power gamer will always want to exploit those. One of its upsides is also a downfall for it. With the SRD, players can find obscure traits, feats, and archetypes that were meant for a certain adventure path that was released, or a certain campaign setting. A lot of the time those options are very powerful. Because of this, it's not balanced very well. On the upside, because of all those supplements, you have a plethora of options when choosing material as a DM. Another downside to all this material is that newcomers can very easily feel overburdened by all this information. The feats are laid out in such a way that if you want your character to be a badass horsemaster who's a crack shot at shooting his or her bow and arrow while standing on the saddle while the horse is moving at full speed, great. Here's a list of feats that you will have to take in order for that to happen, leaving new players feeling like they can't do anything, but we'll get back to this rather soon. As far as skills go, your class dictates what your class skills are, and at every level you get ranks to put in these class skills. The first rank you put in a class skill, you get +3 bonus. This leads to some being masters of diplomacy and such. On the downside, you can't really do anything if you don't have ranks in it, so it's both a good and terrible thing. So that covers basic options available for creating a character, but how does it play? How does it run? In my humble opinion, Pathfinder is great, until you hit about level 9 or 10. The actions become so convoluted with various bonuses, the AC and ability scores, some that only account for when you move a certain number of feet in your turn. It's tedious for everyone else who's waiting their turn, and especially the DM. In combat, there are so many types of actions with predetermined types that it leaves very little to the imagination and creativity. The main actions are standard, move, full round action, swift, immediate, and free. Within those are descriptions of what you can do. Then there's combat maneuvers that you use this thing called your combat maneuver bonus versus the opponent's combat maneuver defense. They encompass such things as grapple, disarm, bull rush, dirty trick, kind of like using pocket sand or something, disarm, drag, etc., and so forth. There are so many rules for combat that I could spend a couple of videos discussing them. With all these rules, it's hard to leave anything to the imagination. In fact, it's so complex that people have made flowcharts for stating what you can and cannot do in a certain action. That's ridiculous. To their credit, there is a +2 -2 rule that basically states you should use those numbers in place of the real numbers if you don't know what they are and don't want to spend time looking it up. Now, remember about a minute or two ago when I said new players may feel like they can't do what they want? It starts off in the character creation and building of your character, and is finally seen in combat. All these actions that you want to do or think, hey, this sounds fun in theory. I want to sprint through my opponent's space jump up on the table, and then jump onto the chandelier, and finally up to the balcony. That's great, and you can absolutely do that if you selected the proper feats that give you bonuses for this very difficult action. This new player didn't know it at the beginning that she'd want to do all these things, and now she's been turned off from the system for it being too restricting. Now, there is a method to their madness, as a lot of people do enjoy combat simulators. With the various rule sets of Pathfinder, you're able to do just that, and a lot of actions actually do make sense. Even though to have success with some, you have to carefully monitor your feat selection. Then you have the outrageously high ACs, and the magic items that are a dime a dozen and super powerful. Things can get pretty unrealistic pretty fast. So if you enjoy number crunching and are one of those people that can know all the rules of a system by reading extensively, then that's great. You should probably play Pathfinder and stop watching the video right here, because now I'm going to go into D&D 5th edition. I really do believe that 5th edition is the antithesis of Pathfinder. The character creation is quite limited, as it's not even a year old yet. The selection of races and classes are actually quite good though. What's even more important, there's no classes that are just outright useless. I want to play pretty much all the classes. There's not a definitive one that I can say, oh, this one does this way more better than the other one, you know? I want to play all of them. They all look good, okay? Sure, there are things that you can do to make one class more powerful, but you don't see the level of differences as you do in Pathfinder. It's simple, but it's not dumb. There are also various types of sub-races in this to add more variability. Then there are archetypes for some classes, or paths, or oaths, depending on what type of class you'll be playing. For example, if you're a paladin, you have 3 oaths to choose from. These will determine what type of paladin you will be. There's the Oath of Devotion, Oath of the Ancients, and Oath of Vengeance. It's not much, but less is more in this edition. You may hear that a lot, but it's so apparent in this. After you choose your races and your classes, you have backgrounds to choose from. These determine things like starting languages, skill proficiency, and equipment. They also can, they don't have to, determine personality traits, your ideals, your bond, and flaw. Now, you're even welcome to come up with these on your own as long as you run it by the DM first. For example, an acolyte's random trait could be that he quotes or misquotes sacred text and proverbs in almost every situation. Their ideal could be power. They have a bond that everything one does is for the common people, and with a flaw of he is inflexible in his thinking. Things like this tend to fill the player's mind with inspiration, which, not so ironically, is a term for a rule that a DM can enact if the player is playing to their character. They can then expend it in a situation to give them advantage on a roll. As far as skills go, it's nothing like Pathfinder. Your background dictates what you're proficient at, and then your proficiency bonus goes up by level. So yeah, you'll be slightly better at someone in stealth, but not by a crazy amount. When you eventually get the feats, you don't have this crazy list of feats, and you won't need to have that in 5th edition. A feat in 5th edition doesn't build up to any other feats like it does in Pathfinder. Once you have a feat, you are a master at that one thing. Because of this, there's a catch. You may choose to increase your ability scores, or you can choose a feat. At the end of the day, character creation is a breeze. You have a good amount of variation, and there's not a bad class in the bunch. While character creation is great and all, there's more to a system than that. Combat, again, has a wholly different philosophy than Pathfinder and 4th edition and 3.5. For instance, AC matters a lot. Unlike its contender, AC doesn't really scale that much and doesn't have as many modifiers to it. A character that has an AC of 18 to 21 is incredibly hard to hit at any level. It's hard to hit because attack roll modifiers are incredibly low. If something has this +7 or 8 to hit, it's going to be a rough day. Even an adult dragon, depending on its color, doesn't have an AC of more than 19. Maybe there are some that do, but I know that an adult blue dragon only has AC of 19. Then there's actions, or really I should say things that you can do in a turn. You have an action and you have a movement. There are things you can do with your actions, such as attack, grapple, disengage, dodge, and much more. However, most importantly, in the book, it even states that your actions are not limited by what's in the book, by what the actual descriptions are. This opens it up to the imagination. As long as you describe what you're trying to do to the DM will then say that's impossible, and then hopefully give you a reason why said action is impossible. Or he or she will then say, okay, give me a dex check with a DC of 20, a rather challenging DC in this, and then that's it. This can also be a bad thing though because of the looseness of the rules. It's ultimately down to a DM. A DM that loves the rules and it's coming from Pathfinder or 4th edition might not really allow it because it doesn't state the action or anything like that in the rulebook. Just because it's not in the rulebook doesn't mean you can't do it though. Then again, this is all according to your DM. There's no full round actions or swift actions. Instead, swift actions are really kind of interactions. You interact with things on your movement, thus being part of your movement action. Things like draw a potion or a weapon. Some classes give you bonus actions, which are just that, a bonus action. AC and actions are two of the game's biggest balancers. There's a gentle economy between the two. A third balancer, though, are the magic items. There seem to be less of them now and much less common. So be careful in your homebrews by adding too many. It can upset the balance and make your players almost unstoppable at too low a level. Now, in the Dungeons Master's Guide for 5th edition, there are a ton of variant rules that you can add into your game. If you want your game to feel more like 4th edition tactical combat or Pathfinders, you can add flanking and the diagonal movement speed reduction as well as facing rules. There are many more variant rules to create a system that you feel is up to your standards of complexity. All this boils down to is how fun the respective systems are. On one hand, we have a mechanical mess, one that does have its perks, one that has a lot of magical items, and you can create a great character that's really great at a few things. However, on the other side, we have a very neat and open system, one that wants you to use your imagination with actions and out of combat as well, one that inspires you to be whatever you want to be. Pathfinder is quite fun. I know I was harsh with it in this video, but it can truly be a fun system. Its in-depth combat system is engaging, although sometimes tedious. That being said, it just doesn't flow very well. I look at Bruce Lee when he said, "Become like water, my friend." Pathfinder isn't like water at all. It's more like a complex piece of machinery. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is an absolute blast to play. It's very much like water. It has a free form and engaging nature that fits whatever your style is. Combat is very fluid and not convoluted with a variety of rule sets that dictate that you can't do X if you don't have Y, at least too often. It just works, and it's a prime example of the less is more mantra. In the end, both sides have their ups and downs. As for me, I think I'll be playing D&D 5th edition for a long time. Thanks for watching.